welcome everybody to LiR Confidential on LiRmedia.tv, and our email is info@lirmedia.tv. And dia great Mairéad agus fáilte goodie an chláir LiRmedia.tv. I'm delighted that our special guest this morning is Mairéad Farrell, one of the shiny new TDs who came in the last general election in February. God, it seems so long ago, 20 February of this year. Good morning, Mairéad, and welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, what was I going to say? You got involved in politics at a very young age. You got elected to Galway City Council, is it 2014?
I did indeed, yeah, in 2014 when I was 24.
And now everybody is counting up on their fingers. What does that make you?
No problem.
We'll leave it at that. So what was that experience like, going around knocking at doors, and were you active before that, before you got involved, in the sense that were you out there in the community anyway doing things?
Yeah, well, I suppose for me it wasn't that unusual with the election campaigns, because I'd been involved in an awful lot of election campaigns prior to that. So I joined Sinn Féin in 2008, and I would have been involved quite heavily in the 2019 local elections. And even before that, I would have been involved in different general election and local election campaigns, as well as referenda. So I was quite used to the way a campaign was run and how to run a campaign. So it was just slightly different in the sense that I was a candidate this time. So in that sense, it wasn't that unusual. I had just moved back to Galway, I suppose, in the September prior to the local elections. And then really, I was selected in the end of that September, and it was kind of all systems go then until the local elections. We canvassed the whole area twice that time, just to kind of introduce me as an initial, as a first-time candidate.
Right.
And that quite effective.
And you grew up in Merview, did you?
I did indeed, yes. So it's an inside of Galway.
Mm-hmm. Of course, your dad is a well-known anti-war activist.
Yep.
Ned Farrell. But anyway, look, you grew up in Merview. What was that like? Would you describe your house as your family as very politically tuned in?
I suppose, yeah. Both my parents would be quite political, absolutely. So, yeah, I grew up in Merview, and then we moved out to Mary in Oranmore, and now I live back in Merview again. So yeah, no, I enjoyed my time in Merview. I went to Glasgow-Dara and Closh-na-Curva, so two Irish language primary and secondary school, which were both on the east side of the city. Closh-na-Curva has now moved over to the west side of the city. But yeah, no, I enjoyed my upbringing all right, yeah.
Now you graduated from NUI Galway, and you'll be in economics, and that'll be what would loosely described as a business degree, would it?
No, it's an arts degree. So I did history and economics for my undergraduate degree, and I spent 1 year in Erasmus in Berlin. So my mother is from Berlin. So I studied, so I didn't want to study languages, I wanted to study history and economics. So I just did the 1 year over in Germany so that I would have that German on my CV as well. So I did that 4-year course then. So then in what must have been 2012, I finished that in NUI Go, and then I went off to do my master's. But I really enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed the experience of going to Berlin as well.
I have a son working in Berlin. He loves it. Yeah.
What part?
Yeah. Oh, don't ask me what part. I haven't been over to see him yet. I hope he's not watching this.
When did he move over?
Last year.
Oh, well then COVID hit, in fairness, so you didn't have much choice.
I don't know. I'll fly in sometime.
Yeah.
We'll see across the border. But did you enjoy Berlin?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I really liked Berlin, and I still go there quite often. Obviously not now since the whole, travel ban and everything, but hopefully at some point we'll be able to travel again.
Well, I think it's rapidly, hopefully, positively moving towards that. You went to Queen's University for your masters in. I'm just intrigued about this myself. Maybe it's my ignorance or my age, but you got your master's in science in finances. What?
No, it's a Master of Science in Finance. So it's just the name. So like you can do a Master of Arts, MA, but mine was an MSc rather than an MA.
All right.
MSc of Finance. So it was in risk management and financial regulation. I really liked it. So I kind of picked it. I would have looked at all the courses and that, and it was like the finance, normal finance, but just had a few extra courses on it. So I was interested in that, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked the finance stuff. I always felt like economics was very much like politics, you know.
And of course, now that you're spokesperson for public expenditure and reform, all of that will serve you well, no doubt. You'll be marking, as they say in political terms, you'll be marking, is it Michael McGrath?
It is indeed, yeah.
Tell me something. How do you find the whole experience of the Dáil?
Yeah, I like it. It's enjoyable. I think that it helps the fact that I was a councillor before this for 5 years, so I know how kind of like have a bit of knowledge about constituency work and all that kind of thing. But look, I enjoy being up here. I'm up here today, and I have my constituency office open in Galway City, which is great as well. So I'd be there Monday and Fridays, and then Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays I'd be in Dublin.
So Monday and Friday you're down in Galway, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in Dublin. Do you get a small bit of time for yourself?
I try. It'd be hard. Yeah, but it's nice, like, you know.
And I know you're young. I'm not young, but you're new to the TD, to the Dáil at this stage. But obviously, you have an awful lot more colleagues with you now. This time the party has rather Sinn Féin, so it's a big party. It took 100 years nearly, but it's a big party in the history of things at this stage. And how do you find the atmosphere in Dáil, in Dáil, and mixing with other TDs, other people, yourself?
Well, we have a great team here, you know. Everyone's very friendly and helpful to each other, so it's quite good here, even on our floors. So my office is beside Matt Carthy's and that, so he'd always be helpful. While he's new TD, he was obviously an MEP before this, so it's different.
He was.
But yeah, everyone's just in and out of each other's offices, so we have an open door policy, so our doors are open and people can pop in and out as they.
There must be an awful lot of what I'm saying, an awful lot of draw on your time. For instance, doing things like this, interviews and stuff, you know. I know it's part and parcel of the thing, but nevertheless, doing interviews on what we call the national broadcaster on RT and stuff like that. How do you find that? The way Sinn Féin are treated?
Well, I mean, I suppose you get, it's all about getting experience in doing these things and getting used to them, especially when it's the likes of the RTEs and that, where, you know, you're on live or whatever. So it's just like, I always say yes if I do get asked, because it's all experience, and
right.
The more you do it, the kind of more comfortable you are doing it as well.
Well, I'll tell you, you've been one of the, I suppose, the very, very good people who have been interviewed. I've been watching an awful lot of TDs being interviewed, obviously. I have very little else to do when I'm retired, only watching all the TDs being. But no, it is a tough business to be in, there's no doubt about that, you know. But you have youth on your side. Now, the moment in Galway West, just getting back to the general election that night, that evening, and of course you had in your consistency of Eamon O'Keefe, who's been there forever, and Noel Grealish, and Catherine Connolly. They were all sitting TDs, and obviously Sinn Féin themselves didn't have a great local election in 2019, and they admitted that themselves. So for you yourself then going into that election in Galway West, I mean, I was looking down through the figures, you got 8,464 votes, which I'm sure that did surprise you as well, did it? To be honest.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, the thing is, it was such a short election campaign. So it was 4 weeks. Now, it seemed obviously a lot longer when we were in the middle of it, but it was a very short election campaign. And as you said, and as you rightly pointed out, we didn't have a good local election. So our expectation was quite low. You know, I just wanted to put everything that we could into it. So we worked really, really hard in the general election. We just put everything into it. But we knew from the doors that, like, there was a different response. We knew that people really wanted some change in the Dáil, that they wanted people that understood them and spoke for them. And I think that really hit home in the general election. So the likes of the pensions issues.
Yes, I know myself. I had to retire at 65 and eat grass till I was 66. You know, which was shocking, but
yeah.
You're right there, because in Shannon, I know myself, noticeably myself, where you have traditional, I hate saying that word, traditional Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael people. They were absolutely, there was there was a momentum for change. And as you said, Mairéad, the short campaign, I didn't know whether it would be a positive or a negative for Sinn Féin, but the way it turned out. So then on that night when you were, obviously the people who canvassed with you, you had a fair idea that you were in with a fighting chance for a seat, obviously, if you're honest.
Well, it was, I don't really know what we thought beforehand, but once the exit poll came out, that was like indicative that we had a very good chance of taking a seat. And then the boxes started opening on the Sunday morning, but they were opening in my side of town first. So we were doing very well there. But again, that wasn't necessarily like, it could have been just because I was the only person from the east side of the city running. And then we saw that it was kind of replicated across. So then on the Sunday night, I was waiting on some like 44 transfers. But then they stopped the count, so it wasn't until the Monday morning then that we took the seat. But
Right.
yeah,
Well,
you
certainly,
obviously when you're only looking at 44 transfers,
I know, of course you were known because you were in local politics and all of that, so people didn't say Mairéad too, unlike in where I live in County Clare. When Violet Hann got elected, Violet Hann went, there were people phoning people like myself, who was she, because she had come down earlier on in County Clare in the local elections to canvass her Mike McKee, who passed away since, passed away. But anyway, well, I knew her from the local elections, but people outside the small group did not know who she was. And that was replicated around the country. But I mean, there you go.
They know her now.
Things can change in politics very, very, very quickly. And even the government we have now in place, who would have said back in February that this would be the government we have in place? But anyway, so be it. You'll have to run with the ball you're given. My special guest this morning on LiR Confidential here on LiR Media is Mairéad Farrell. And for all of you listening and looking in later on, info@lirmedia.tv. Mairéad Farrell is the TD for Galway East, I beg your pardon.
Or West.
Galway West. I was right so first time.
Council was Galway City East. That's confusing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And she's the spokesperson on public expenditure and reform. You have contributed to a few debates, Mairéad, in Dáil, and obviously everybody gets to make their first speech. What was that like for you?
It was actually not that intimidating. It just kind of reminded me of the council. So of the council chambers. So we had, it was the very first day that the Dáil sat, and Mary Lou was put forward as a nominee for Taoiseach, and I actually hadn't realised until that day that that everyone could speak. So everyone had spoken. So I just said I'll just get it over and done with, and got up and said a few words, just saying that I support Mary Lou's nomination for Taoiseach rather than waiting. And thank God I did, because the problem was then shortly after that I went into lockdown. There was people who hadn't made their maiden speech for a very long time.
Oh, that's right. Of course, it did.
I was lucky that I had done it on that day, so I was glad, because otherwise it builds up in your head as a thing to do,
That's true. That's true. And what do you, as a party now, Sinn Féin as a party, how do you think they're performing since? I mean, obviously with the restrictions, it's very difficult to get a handle on out there in the general countryside what's happening, because every other day you'd have Dáil, you'd have speeches, you'd have a regularity of things like that, And how do you think Sinn Féin are doing as a party up to now, and despite the restrictions on everybody?
I think very well. I think people are coming to me and saying that they really want to see Sinn Féin in government, and that if there's another election, people will absolutely be voting for Sinn Féin and in greater numbers. So I think the work that's being done by a lot of our spokespeople really is resonating with people, which is obviously the key thing. And we're putting forward alternatives and that. And in fairness, the government has been an absolute shambles. They don't seem to know whether they're coming or going. So that's, I think, the reality. People are very annoyed with what's going on at the moment.
Looking in from the outside, some people are, I suppose, like myself, were surprised that Sinn Féin went along with the latest regulations, voting for the latest regulations in the Dáil. Some of them didn't make
We
sense.
voted for the legislation. The regulation comes afterwards. The regulations weren't what was voted on. We voted with the legislation. The regulations came after that. So we wouldn't have been told what the regulations were. We
I
have
understand that, yeah.
so that needs to be made very clear. We have an amendment in on this Health Act for today in relation to that, because that regulation that they put in that was separate to the legislation we voted on Thursday.
For our listeners, Mairéad, sorry for coming across you. The legislation you voted on, okay, it was a general piece of legislation, right? Obviously, the additions and the amendments and all of that comes down the track later.
Yeah.
And in a nutshell, what was that legislation that you supported?
Well, the legislation was regarding like the health measures that needed to be taken up to, I think it was November 7th, and making sure that, like, you know, places were like adhering to guidelines. But the problem was with the regulation then was that they started saying that the pubs need to keep receipts of what people ate for a 28-day period, which caused an awful lot of confusion for people because it just didn't make any sense. So that's what came in separately, I suppose. But I think that what we've put in now an amendment to tomorrow, and that'll which in the today, sorry, the amendment to that Health Act today to try and get rid of that.
So now, are you going to get much support, do you think, for that?
I think so. I think we will, but I mean, it just depends. I doubt the government are going to vote with us, and then that if the government don't vote with us, well, then it's not going to pass because they have a majority.
The other disquieting thing as we're on the COVID situation, disquieting thing for me anyway personally is the GAA matches down here, and you walk across into Tyrone, and you walk across into Down, and you walk across into Antrim, you can go to a GAA match. You walk down the road into Monaghan and Cavan and you can't.
Yeah, well, like, I mean, we've long been calling for long been calling for United Ireland, but we've also been saying that there needs to be one approach, and I think that's key. And we've been saying that from the start. And I actually think it's very interesting. I think that Brexit and the COVID response has really gotten people thinking about the whole concept of United Ireland and the importance of having a unity referendum. Before this, it wouldn't have been kind of, I suppose, as commonplace for people to raise it with me in Galway and that. But people are really beginning to talk.
Yeah, as I said to you, I have friends who go regularly to football and hurling matches, what we call across the border, which it isn't, you know, and then come down and they can't go to one just 2 miles down the road. It makes no sense to me.
And the thing is,
the virus can't distinguish whether you're at a football or a hurling match.
And also the thing is that the virus doesn't recognize any kind of artificial border. Like, that's reality. So it just shows the importance in everything in life, really, that we need to have a one island approach.
That's true. Well, that's true of flight as well. You can go to Belfast and go to a lot of places. You can go to Shannon and Cork. You can't fly. In Dublin, there's restrictions to countries. As you said, it's in marked contrast, and it is highlighting the fact that we're such a small country anyway, you know, and the border really is becoming an irrelevancy, for the want of a better word, you know.
Yeah, but it shows the importance of having a unity referendum, and I think the stuff this week with Brexit shows it again, you know.
And what about that particular bugbear of mine? What would Sinn Féin's support? Does Sinn Féin support the complete banning of people going to football and hurling matches?
Look, we feel that you need to follow public health advice. That's the reality, right? We're seeing an increase in numbers. We have to be very careful. We need to ensure that social distancing.
Well, the increase in numbers is because there's more testing.
It's not just because there's more testing. There's also an issue with schools being back and all that kind of thing. Of course, we need to have more rapid testing. I was listening to Morning Ireland this morning, and there was a medical person on, and he was saying what really needs to happen is that tests are done within a 12-hour period, and that results are in ASAP. My sister's a teacher. She's very concerned hearing about different schools.
Is she?
Closing down, yeah. So she is very concerned about schools closing down, you know, like cases coming up in schools and that. And now we're seeing that that it looks like the pubs will be reopening on the 21st. We're also hearing about the universities going back. So obviously, as we kind of become back to some type of a normal or a new kind of normal, and the fact that, you know, we're reopening so many things, you know, we are going to see a spike in cases, which is obviously scary and frightening for an awful lot of people. Hopefully, I know that they were saying that that there was, you know, this vaccine in Oxford, and now there seems to be a bit of a setback with that. So let's just see how it develops, but hopefully we will see vaccine soon.
My own 7 and 6 for what it's worth is that I think people shouldn't be talking about a vaccine at all, because the likelihood is pretty slim from across the water. And in America it's very slim. We should be trying to do it as they do in other countries. We have to live with it anyway. It's a virus, you know what I mean? We'll have to try and live with it and organise society in a better way with it, you know. That chap you're referring to was from the Mater Hospital, I think. Was it this morning on I heard them as well, you know.
Yeah.
And he was saying that numbers, those people aren't sick with it. They aren't in hospital. They aren't in ICU. So these
I think it's because it's younger people who are being affected at the moment.
Yeah.
So
true.
that's why we're seeing
Obviously, if they weren't tested, they wouldn't know they had it.
Well, I'd say there's plenty of people who are quite ill with it too, like just because they're not in ICU.
I'm just being
They're not being tested just at random. They're being tested because they don't feel well.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like I ring up my GP and say, "Can I have a COVID test for no reason?" You know.
Yeah. It's like most viruses anyway. Well, I don't mean to belittle the thing. I'm not saying it's like more virus. It's a virus, and
Very frightening. Yeah,
we
scary.
have to. My own mum, sure, she's 91. She's in a nursing home. So I mean, I'm acutely aware of it. And my dad is 90, but he's as strong as a bull. He's at home, walking around, and he's grand. But I mean, we do worry about these things. Mairéad Farrell is my special guest this morning here, the TD and the spokesperson for Sinn Féin on public expenditure and reform. Tell all your friends about us and LiR Confidential and LiR Media. Before we wind up this, Mairéad, I know you're a bit stuck for time, being the TD, being in Dublin 3 days a week, and I don't know where to get your spare time, but I hope you get a bit of downtime as well.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And in yourselves, for this term of the Dáil, there'll be a budget, I presume. I didn't even want to talk about it. Is there a budget on the offing?
Yeah, it looks like in October. Yeah.
Is it going to be a 5-minute budget where we have no money, we'll come back next year?
No, we don't know. Like at the moment, we don't know what the parameters are. We don't know. Like, I mean, we all know that there's going to have to be borrowings, but I don't think there's very much clarity at the moment about the budget really coming from government. So I suppose we'll see in the next few weeks what they come out with. But
and before I let you go, what about Brexit? I didn't even want to mention the word. It's been going on for so long.
Well, it's been going on for 4 years. It's crazy.
Is it? Oh, Jesus, it is. 2016 was the referendum?
Yeah.
I thought we were slow here to change things.
Yeah. And yeah, it's and this week, like with what they were saying, you know, it's not good. And
well, I think that's a bit of brinkmanship myself, political brinkmanship on behalf of the Tories. You don't know, really. We don't know. Sure, we don't know what's happening. But at December the 31st or January the 1st is looming. That's the absolute deadline. There's an international agreement there, isn't there, signed off between Britain and the EU?
Yeah, absolutely. Signed in January, yeah.
So that'll have to be...
Well, they're saying that they're not going to adhere to it. So we're going to just have to see. I think the next few days, the next weeks are going to be very interesting to see what happens. But even if it is them just saying this, and, you know, that's not good enough. Like, you can't treat people like that. You can't have that situation where they think it's okay to make those comments.
Yeah, it is.
You know, at the end of the day, it's international law.
So we look forward to your contributions, Mairéad, on the upcoming budget. But you're a very able person in the personal PSR, your spokesperson on finance anyway, you know, I'm sure you know that. And I'm absolutely appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule, as I said. And Mairéad, it'll be great to see you again in a couple of months' time, hopefully. And from this edition of LiR Confidential, on LiRmedia.tv, and our special guest, Mairéad Farrell. Thank you for taking the time out. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I just counted that for editing purposes, because when you go out of the meeting, you're bang. But
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that was great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mairéad, and best of luck in all your work. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much. See you now.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.